thing that's happening with bullying is the bully is trying to get power over you. And they do that by insulting and saying mean things. And their victory is when they see the hurt in your face, the sadness, and you can steal that victory away from them by acting as if what they say doesn't mean anything to you. And you don't do it in a way. You do it in a way that's like say for example, they say, "You're ugly." You can just say, "Thanks." And just laugh it off. Or, "Your clothes are super ugly." "Yeah, my clothes aren't that nice. I know. I like your clothes though." What if you did that? What can they do with that? They might try to keep insulting you, but if they can see that they're not being successful in taking you down, you might walk away feeling like you've gotten a victory yourself. And I know that you can walk away and just hold your head up and keep that light smile on your face, but not overdoing it. And then go home and if you need to cry because it hurts so much what they said. But what matters is what happens in the moment when they're doing it to you, and you're taking it down. You're taking the energy away from it, taking their victory away. And it's just by becoming a good actor. So obviously it takes a bit of practice, lots of practice. So maybe even practice with a friend. Maybe there's somebody that you keep bumping into the hallway between certain classes, and you're just dreading you're gonna bump into them again, because they seem to be on a roll. You are their target. Practice with a friend what they say to you, and practice good responses that will just sort of take the wind out of their sails, take the power away from them. Give that a try. So on that note, I found a really nice little message. It says, if someone criticizes you and you counter it by criticizing them, then the chain continues. Instead, thank them for their kind words and see what happens. The day you drop your defenses, the other person will not know how to respond. You see it there? So this is obviously going to be blending colors. So I'll be teaching you how to blend colors, and that's actually kind of tricky. But I'll be showing you that in this tutorial. And then also drawing flowers and drawing with fine lines. Alrighty? So today's message is going to be, if someone criticizes you and you counter it by criticizing them, then the chain continues. Instead, thank them for their kind words and see what happens. The day you drop your defenses, the other person will not know how to respond. So I'll put those aside for now. And we're going to practice blending colors today. And I'm going to use my wide flat. And I'm going to start it out with just a little bit wet, and I'll dab it out on the paper towel. Starting with some ultramarine blue. And I've got a small piece of paper, and I'm just going to be going horizontal across the top. So I only need, pretty well one good brush load. So I'm making sure both sides are full, but make sure that it's watery enough too that it's going to track nice and smooth. And you'll see that I also made sure that there's some wax paper underneath so that the pages underneath don't get all mooky. Then I'm going to go to some deep violet. And you notice I didn't clean my brush first. That's okay, because these guys are going to I want those sort of two colors to be going together here, blending in. So I'm going to go over, back and forth, over top of that wet blue paint, and see how it softens the line. Now I'm going to get a little bit more of the deep violet and just sort of track it down a little bit farther. If you get a little happy mistake like that, just wipe your brush and carry on. And you'll see how I'm going right off both sides. I don't start my brush strokes like in the middle, because then you're going to make a mark. You want it to be smooth. So I'm going to clean my brush to go into the pink. And you'll see how it's pretty translucent. You can see through it. So I'm just going to grab a little bit more paint, go right off the edges so you can't see my brush strokes. Clean my brush, dab it out. Get some orange. This is just cat orange. And you want to move rather quickly because you want to be layering these colors while they're still wet. And I'm going to bring in a bit more pink. Maybe just trowel this down a little bit. And you can go back in and sort of correct some things. I'm going to grab some yellow, but I'll do my little fixing later. See, I want to move quickly. I want to go in while it's still wet, and the paints will all sort of blend a lot nicer together. And then I'll just go right off the bottom, right off the edge. I'm going to clean my brush. I think I could make this violet a little bit clearer. So going in with a clean brush, there we go. And then softly letting it blend in a little bit. Oops. Okay, so I've given the paint a chance to dry, and I've decided that my words are going to go right there. And so I'm going to draw my flowers around that. So I think I might just have a big one up here, and if you want, you could start with just drawing a big circle about how big you want it, put a mark in the center of where the center of it's going to be, and then just start drawing. I put like 5 petals. And then I might do another one maybe down here falling off. And you might have your own style of petals that you'll do. That's totally perfect. If you have your own, maybe you prefer tulips or daisies. I don't even know what kind of flower this is called. And then there's probably going to be a stem coming down here. So maybe I'll have just another, maybe, it'll be like a little flower bud and then a leaf. And then maybe I'll have some leaves coming up there. So I shall begin. Actually, I think what I'll do is I'm going to take a little Sharpie and I'm just going to get clear. On where my lines are. And then there's this little branch that comes across this way with little leaves. And you can do any kind of arrangement of your branches that comes to you. You might like, oh, I think I want a whole bunch of flowers. Well, then you do that. Or you might just say, I just feel like having one. You can be the designer of your art. You don't have to follow me completely. And then there's going to be a nice big leaf here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this small round brush, and I've got some white. Actually, this is gesso paint. And it tends to be pretty thick, which I like. Or you can always use like some titanium white or something. And I'm just going to paint all the edges of the petals first and then fill in the middle. And you see how I'm pulling the brush towards me? And turn your brush, keep pulling it towards you, and take your time. These fine lines are actually kind of tricky to do, and it takes lots of practice. And so I'm trying to just stay inside the black line. And then you can see how I'm turning my page so that I can keep pulling my strokes towards me, because that is the way that I have the most control. If I tried going sideways and going this way, I won't be able to even see what's going on underneath my brush. Like I won't have as much control. So yeah, just keep turning your artwork around so that you can keep pulling the strokes towards you. And if you go over your black lines, do not worry. I plan on freshening mine up later. I just wanted to put them down so that I could see what I had drawn, and maybe I was going to change my mind and maybe add some more flowers or leaves or something, but I felt pretty good with how it went. So one layer of white on the buds, the leaves, and the flowers, and then I'll probably put a second layer on top, and then we'll be back. So I put a second coat of white on everything. And the reason I put a coat of white on things that aren't actually even going to end up being white is that the background colors, and if you just tried to paint green on top of the blue, it'll come out just dark, like it'll just not be a clean, you know, bright green. This way, if I put white down and I put the green, it'll just come, the color will be true. And so make sure that you let the first coat dry completely before you put the second coat, so then the acrylic paint doesn't start to lift off on you. I've got this really handy little tool. It's by Ranger. It's a little heated craft tool. And when I turn it on, it's sort of like a low-grade blow dryer, except it's really, really hot, and you can only have your artwork about that close to the craft tool. So this is a good way to speed up the drying process. Okie dokie. So I'm going to leave these flowers white. I think they look nice, but I do have some lime green here, and I'm going to load my brush, turning it and tapping it and pulling it, seeing that I've got a nice point. And I'm just going to paint these green now. And I haven't gone in yet and fixed up my black lines, because I know that when I fill these parts in, I might make more boo-boos, so that's fine. See, that green just brightens everything right up. And it's a color that's not in the background, so it's just bringing in another fun spring color. And then you can just sort of pick any of the colors that we used in the background to put into the middle of your flower. And I'm sort of leaning towards whatever I've got left. So I've got lots of yellow left, so I'm going to use a little blob of yellow in the middle. Just like that. And then I'm going to use my, actually I'm going to dry this first just before I add in the final little finishing up lines. You just keep the craft tool, you know, about that far from the surface. It's super hot, but super effective. I really love having it in the studio. Okay, and I can turn it sideways and see if it looks shiny, and that's how I can tell that it's wet. The yellow parts are wet, but I think that'll be fine for now. So I'm just going to touch up all these nice little black lines. And I know that sometimes after I've had a Sharpie tool for a while, it'll start getting grumpy about halfway through a project, and that just means the ink is getting low. Or you might have accidentally put wet paint on the nib, and it just totally blocks the ink from flowing. So just really be sure that your paint is dry before you start going in and finishing up with the refreshing of the lines. And you see how I didn't make these black lines go right into the middle? I left the middles white of the flowers. I've got a storm outside if you're hearing that wind. Once again, I'm pulling the lines towards me. It's just easier that way. Especially when I'm trying to do something kind of quick for you guys. I'm in a rush. And you know what I'll also do is I'll put my finger down. So for example here, if I want to keep my hand steady, I'm using my finger as a pivot. It helps to keep my wrist nice and steady. Oops. There's a bit of a mess down there, but that's okay. Alrighty. So now it's time to glue down the quote. Got a little blob of Mod Podge. Get my brush out and reposition how I want to put these down. Yeah, that's the order they go. So I think there, there, and there. And I might make them like a little bit moving around a bit. Or what do you think? All on the same flush left. I think flush left looks good. Alrighty. So something nice to do is maybe to put it where it's going to go. And then also on the back. Now you see, obviously I got these off of a printer, and the glue is making the ink shift. So if you do put some glue on the top, which makes it nice and shiny, in this case I got glossy Mod Podge, just dust it, don't rub it. And then your words will stay looking pretty. I've got them sort of like the same distance apart. Now I'd probably give that a little blow dry before I close my book. Another thing, if you ever are using Mod Podge and like collage and stuff in your workbook journal, it's always a good idea between your pages to put a piece of wax paper, sort of keep it in there all the time, because this glue can stay sticky and I've ruined artwork where I've just closed it, left it for a couple of weeks, opened it, and I had to literally rip the pages apart. So even when you think the glue is dry, it can still be a little bit tacky. So just keep that in mind if you want to keep your artwork happy. Yeah, I use gloss Mod Podge, and I will, after this dries, I'm going to go over and I'm going to put it everywhere. But first, before I put the glue down, I'm going to be getting an eraser, and I'm going to be erasing all these pencil lines. I don't need those anymore. So I'll erase those, and then I'll finish it off. And then be sure to put the date and to sign your name if you like, or you can put the date on the back side if you like, just so you can remember when you did it. Thanks for joining me.